Welcome, everyone. Welcome to our Coming Out Stories from India series. Coming out. Coming out is a term used primarily in the LGBT community when a queer person shares about their sexual orientation, usually with friends and family. Nicola and I decided to launch these Coming Out Stories from India to ensure we all work together in changing the current narrative. The last few years, since my own coming out, I've been looking for role models, stories that can help me in my own journey. There was hardly any, and if at all, not in depth enough. There's a common thread running through the narratives. The journeys have been challenging for most. However, we also discovered that not all stories are that of pain, suffering, and trauma either. Our coming out stories from India started taking shape as we started discovering that we all need positive role models to bring to our audience real people with their real stories, lived experiences, keeping in mind, though, the unique complexities of India. Hopefully, these coming out stories can help pave the way for those who are in any phase of their coming out journey. I'm Raga Olga De Silva, or Totally Out Now, as you know me. Our guest today is one of the coolest people I know. He has achieved so much at such a young age. I was going through Wikipedia, I was going through his profile, and I thought, wow, is this person for real? Is he this young? And when I watch his journey, it leaves me with so much hope. Let me bring this guest on, right? So our guest today is the one and only Anvesh Sahu. Welcome, Anvesh.
Thank you so much for having me. It's such a delight to be getting to have a conversation with you all over again. Every time I see you, you are such a ball of love and energy and positivity. And just so grateful that I get to have this time, this Pride Month again. Very, very grateful to be here.
Thank you. And you're gorgeous. I told you I'm going to adopt you, right? This is a given. My children, in fact, are almost as old as you are, by the way. My twins are 23. So it's so beautiful to have you. I really, you make me fill with joy every time I see you online. So thank you for being you. So Anvesh, I'm going to now uncover certain parts of you, perhaps the people don't know about. Yeah. So first of all, you were born in Odisha. So is your family from that part of India? Can you just give us a little brief about growing up, your first 10, 15 years?
Yes, absolutely. I am an Odia and I grew up in Odisha. All of my family is, in fact, from Odisha. We were a very conservative little, group of people, and we were a very tightly knit group of people as well. So we didn't have actually a lot of us from the family even going or stepping out of Odisha. So my father was actually the first one from, both my mother and my, father's extended family who actually stepped out of Odisha for the first time way back in, I think, 85, 86, 1985, 1986. And so since then, I think, he did move out, but when he sort of moved back to Odisha again. And that's where I was born in 95. And yeah, I grew up completely in this little, township called Konyad. That's actually me with my, father's first band that he had back then, fondest memories with that van, and grew up in a little township called Konya in Odisha, very conservative little place, totally away from the evils of the world in some ways as well. So yeah, in some ways I actually had a very beautiful childhood in Odisha, and I was there in Odisha till the time I was actually 13 and a half, and then we decided to move to Noida. But my first 13 years in Odisha, at least my first 9 to 10 years, they were really nice and very blissful. I was just a little, boy who was a little femme. So sometimes people would, sort of mock me, but it didn't really matter. My parents never made me feel any different. My father was never, too staunch about, me being this masculine figure in any way. He didn't mind me playing with, dolls here and there, but there were times when I think, as I started growing up, I think that's when I started realizing this idea of, sort of gender, walking into my life. And then I had to play certain roles. I think around the time I was 10 or 11, the boys around me, the girls around me, they started talking about, having crushes. I mean, imagine 10-year-olds having crushes back in school.
Oh, yeah,
Thinking
16
about
olds,
it.
I heard. These days, it's 6 years, 6-year-olds. I'm just going to come to that. Okay, I just want to understand. I'm going to take you back. I want to
Yeah.
understand. Would you define your family as traditional, conservative, or can you just describe when you say Orissa, the place that you grew up? Can you describe the neighborhood? Tell us how was it there?
Yeah. Absolutely. My parents were very, very conservative. We came from a family where nobody, even till date, has actually, married outside the caste, system. So everybody still believes very much in that caste. Even to right now, when my parents were looking for a guy for my sister, they made sure the first guy they went to was a guy who was from our caste, not only Odia, but also from the same community. So it's very, very conservative in a lot of ways. I come from a place where untouchability actually still exists as well. I remember every time I would go to my father's village, a certain guy he used to come to our place, and I would always go and ask my mom, why are we giving him water in a different glass, or why are we giving him food in a different plate? Why is he, so away from us? So untouchability and was is still very, very relevant where my father comes from. And where I grew up, to be very honest, it was still very conservative. Even though we had a group of, I was always surrounded with a group of engineers, and you would think that, oh, they're all techies. Maybe they are, a little away from this conservative system that exists in India. But no, I mean, to be very honest, they were all very, very, rather very conservative, and which is why I think things started sort of getting a little, little difficult as I started growing up. But yeah, I think they were all very. Most of them were actually from very like really poor villages, and they were sort of their success stories. So I sort of don't even blame them because they didn't come from a family where their parents sort of taught them to be a little open-minded. They all came from very, very poor families. And for them, the most important thing was food on the plate. My father came from a below poverty line family. He didn't even have sometimes enough food to, put on his plate. So how do you expect him to, have a very, hunky-dory idea of the world where he comes from? Food is like the basic necessity, and I mean, food is luxury. It's not even necessity; it's a luxury. So, yeah, I totally understand when people have been rather conservative around me. And but I think now I think things maybe perhaps are changing just a little, not too much,
Ah.
but yeah.
So we're talking about compartmentalization, right? In those days where father used to play a certain role, mom played a certain role, your relatives and extended families played a certain role, basically to interfere, to give opinions, to judge, to guide or misguide, whatever, right? So everybody had a role to play. So in that kind of an environment, so I'm talking about your first 13 and a half years, in that kind of an environment, your father, it's a self-discovery, right? You've not discovered yourself right now. I can assume you're saying you had a good childhood, you had good support from your parents, but in a compartmentalized world that you lived in, the, as a boy, and the only boy in the family, right? So were there any expectations set on you, even casually?
Of course, I was the one who would always, help my sister every time she would go to her dance classes. So I was basically already like, even when I was just 4 years old, I was always the protector. I had already been, given this duty of being the protector to my sister. So I actually realized the differentiation that we had between my sister and me very early on. It was always, my sister was, for example, always allowed to learn how to dance, or she was allowed to take up music. And I still remember, in fact, when I was around 2 or 3, I always really liked, what my sister sort of wore to school. So every time she would actually come back home from school, when I was in nursery, I remember when I was 3 years old, I would right away, get inside into her shoes, and I loved playing with those shoes. And sometimes I liked wearing, what my sister wore. So I would go and ask my mother, can I wear it? And sometimes my mother would let me wear it as well. So she was quite a, cute little mother back then. She didn't mind all of that. But I think things started sort of, getting a little more serious around the time I was 9 or 10. Because I do remember having this conversation very well with my mother when, once she spoke to me and she said, one of the aunts told me that, you always act like a girl. What's that all about? Or the fact that, why are you so interested in, wearing my saris, or why are you interested in wearing these earrings, or why are you always so, fascinated with makeup. So there were these conversations that constantly did happen, all around me. And that differentiation became stronger and stronger over the years. But I started noticing them, around the time I was, 4 or 5. That's when it started out slowly and steadily. When I was sort of given a certain kind of task in the family, things that my sister didn't get to do, and then there was a clear distinction in those things. And I still remember my mom still tells me that the reason why she didn't let me learn Odissi, which is basically a classical dance form from Odisha. It's a beautiful dance form, which is where basically you almost look like an apsara, or like a beautiful deity, and wearing these beautiful. They wear these headgears, which basically emulates the Jagannath temple in Puri in Odisha. And it's basically a temple dance form. And every time my sister would dance, I would be like, I want to dance as well. I want to wear that costume as well, or I want to wear makeup as well. So there were these little things which initially my mom didn't mind, but then over the years, as I started growing up, like around 10 or 11, I think that's when she realized that she can't let me have any of these things anymore. So I think those are the times I still remember when the conversation started sort of getting a little heated up. I think my father maybe sort of didn't make it seem very obvious to me. Like I remember he didn't want me to sort of dance and all because he felt like I was not going to focus enough on education. But I do remember that my mother was very, very specific, and she was like, no, 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 let's not get into these things. You're allowed to do these things.
Sure. And so then when you went to school, were you picked on? Were you bullied? Were there slurs at that time?
Yes, a lot of them. In fact, there was this even before I had, become a teenager, even around the time, when I was around, I think I very, very well remember I was actually 10 years old back then. And I used to go to my, friends, tuition classes. I used to learn Sanskrit back then. Which is another sort of classical language that we were all sort of made to learn. Either you got the option of learning Odia or Sanskrit, so I took up Sanskrit back then. So yeah, I took up those tuition classes, and I used to go to my friend's place. And every time I would sort of enter the place, even his mother would always sort of mock me and be like, "Anvesh, to ladki hote hote ladka ho gaya." Or the auntie who used to stay next to us as well, she also used to be like, Anvesh should have been a girl only. I don't know why he's a guy. And when they used to sort of say it in zest maybe, but these are things that did affect me a lot, and I felt really, really bad because I felt like I'm sort of like an incomplete individual for them. I'm either here or there. So I didn't actually always sort of appreciate that. I didn't always like that. But I mean, it was not actually limited to just my friends who were around me who would call me a chakka or K or, 50-50 or kusra, all of these things. But there were also, the parents who supported them. My parents once went up to my class teacher and told him that these are the set of guys who've been sort of trying to pull his leg, and they make him feel really uncomfortable. And I used to get really uncomfortable questions asked all the time. I think one guy once said to me that, Anvesh to class ka sabse bada chakka hai, which means that, Anvesh is the biggest, eunuch of the class. And it was meant, in a very derogatory sense that, I'm the biggest clown or the biggest buffoon in the class. And I didn't like that, and everybody would just laugh it off, and the teachers would always laugh it off. And in fact, I had no sense of respect. I still very well remember one of these teachers once, he slapped me on my face. I was standing, he just I went up to him and he asked me, he was basically referring to this particular acid which is there in apples. I think it was malic acid or malic acid. I don't know the exact pronunciation, but I probably said, it's malic acid. And he slapped on my face right away, smacked me and in front of everybody and said that it's malic acid, it's not malic acid. And I was like, this is what, our previous teacher had told us, so which is why I'm saying this. And then those group of boys, I still very well remember, they just started, laughing at the top of their lungs. And I was just like, I mean, I don't even have any self-respect in the class. that I'm just, even at that age when I was just 10 years old, I still could feel that I was just another, joker in the class who, they didn't think that I had any sense of dignity or career in my head. I was just a buffoon, walking buffoon, and they could just, say whatever they felt like saying, just throwing words at me like I'm a dustbin, and never wondering if how I would feel, with those words. So, and I was like the lowest hanging fruit, I mean, a femme gay boy. I mean, what else do you know to? What else do you want to pull someone's leg and feel superior? So all of the boys, I can't even remember, I mean, hardly probably one boy in the class who was a little supportive of me, and rest everybody else used to just laugh it off. Even the girls eventually joined in.
How sad. I mean, this is traumatic, right? To even go through an experience and that at that younger age. And, schools have to be a safe space. And this is what, sadly, Anvesh has come through all our coming out stories, that schools in India, teachers in India have not been sharing a safe space for us. And actually, I hope that some teachers who are watching this in the audience actually learn from the stories like yours. So here you are going to school, getting bullied basically on a daily basis. Mentally, emotionally, you're in a very, very difficult space. Were you able to go back home, for instance, and share this with your parents and get support, or your sister?
I very well remember not sharing most of these things with my parents. Somehow, I don't know why I didn't share it. Still, I mean, maybe I'll have to think a little more about it. But I never went back home and just maybe once in a while I would share something with them. But somehow it didn't, because everybody would sort of brush it under the carpet. I don't think came from a space where you talk about these things with your parents. And what can they even do? Like the most that they can do perhaps is go to my class teacher and complain. But nothing's going to come out of it because the class teacher also thinks that I'm wrong. So I sort of started not discussing these things at all with my parents, and I didn't think they were important. In fact, every time I would come back home, I would leave my school behind. I didn't take my school with me to my home. So there was a clear distinction in my head as well. So therefore, I never really discussed about it. But they would really really affect me. I would always feel very lonely. I would feel very alienated all the time. I always started, in fact, despising me as well. The more I grew up, the more I realized that I didn't like this femme side of myself. So I would try and sort of put up a more stronger masculine side of me. And I also would like to mention that more than 50% of femme boys or trans folks in our country drop out of schools because of bullying. So it's not something that's irrelevant to talk about, or something that really can be brushed under the carpet. This is costing lives and costing education to a lot of quality education to a lot of kids. And there were times when I was sort of a little scared of going to school as well. But I mean, I mean, I always felt that maybe if I do well in class or if I do well in a competition, then maybe there will be a certain amount of respect for me. So I never actually hid away from, I would always go, and there was still a part of me that would always go and stand up and be like, you know what, I'm here to take your bullet, but because I'm not going to, be bogged down. I'll still come out and I will still talk about it, no matter how, bad you make me feel about me. And even while there were conversations, sometimes I actually avoided listening to these conversations as well, because sometimes I would overhear someone saying, I remember there were these group of kids who were sitting once in a classroom, and I was sitting with a girl who was a very good friend of mine, and the guy who was sitting right in front of me was like, यहाँ पे लड़कों की बहुत कमी है इस एरिया में, and which basically meant that there are not enough boys around us right now. There's the masculine energies are like really weak in this area, and he was basically referring to me that I'm not man enough. So even when I used to ride my bicycle, I used to sort of just ride my bicycle at my own pace, and they would always sort of mock me that I don't ride the cycle like a guy. So there were all of these things that were always thrown at me, and I would just feel very incomplete. So most of my all of years of growing up, especially around the time I started reaching my teenage years, I had sort of become a very much of a recluse in some ways. At least when it came to mingling with my friends, I would sort of stay away from them, and I was always especially when I moved from Odisha to Delhi, and when the bullying sort of intensified, I became a very angry little kid actually.
So were these names that these days we have nomenclature, labels for everything. We know gay, queer, lesbian, trans. We know what these stand for. My days, of course, Anvesh, we had no names other than homosexual. That's all we knew. That's a long time
Okay.
ago. So were these labels? Were you aware of these labels? Did you understand them at that young an age?
No, not at all. I didn't know what gay meant. I remember, in fact, one of these days, those days, we used to sort of wait for our bus on the staircase, and we used to have like a long queue of all the kids standing together to sort of get to the bus stand. And this guy who was standing right in front of me, and for the first time, I had sort of heard of the word lesbian. And when I told him, and he was like, Shh, it's a bad word. You should never say this word ever again. And he got a little off guard. And I remember coming across the word gay for the very first time through the film Dostana, where I got to know this idea of two men wanting to love each other. So I had these ideas of of course it was I was already once I was starting to grow up, I had this attraction towards a certain actor, or I would have a certain kind of dream where I would have this man with me. So I in my head I started questioning, like, can a guy kiss another guy, or can a guy be with another guy? So I remember Googling back in those days, just going on the internet and looking for guy kissing guy. And I came up with these series of images on the internet, on Google, with so many guys kissing each other. And for the first time, I got to know that okay, this is also something that exists. That there is something called being gay or being lesbian. This is what the terminology is all about, and those are the only two words that I knew about. I didn't know about trans. I didn't know about non-binary. I didn't know about queer representation. All of that. So all I knew was gay and lesbian, and what I also knew was that I didn't have to be either of the two. Like you can't be a lesbian or a gay, because that's the wrong thing, and that's very shameful. So, and whatever little representation we had in popular media was also so awful and so abysmal that I never wanted to be associated to the community any which way at all. So, watching these shows sometimes on Hindi television specifically, because back then I had not started watching any English television shows. I started watching them much later, but so I used to always think that I can't be a guy wanting to be with another guy. And I had already made up my mind, even at the age of 13. Imagine that, you know, one day when I grow up, I will basically start having attraction, towards women, and I will basically have my own family, have a little family.
How interesting. For me, it's actually quite shocking to hear these conversations in this, because you're so young. So to me, I felt that things would have changed, that you would have more access to information. But internal homophobia is what you're talking about, which I went through, because of the fear of how people would react to who I was. So then you internalize it, you become homophobic towards your own self, right? So your life kind of took a turn, right, when you went to Noida, when your family moved to another city from Odisha to Noida. It only got
Yeah.
worse for you, as I hear. Can you share how worse could it be than what you've been through already?
So the guys in Delhi were a lot more crass, and they would, speak in a language that I had never heard before. In Odisha, we speak, very sweetly, and it's a very sweet language. बहुत धीरे, like we speak with a lot of, calm and composure. At least, where I was growing up, I'm sure in the, smaller areas of Odisha, maybe things were a little different. But even when I went back to my village, my father's village, everybody spoke really nicely. They never spoke, in a crass manner at all. So I had never come across this image of anybody being just too violent. But when I moved to Noida, things were very different. These boys, were just so, the idea of ultra masculinity had already penetrated their minds. And like day one, I still remember day one. Since day one, I was sort of picked on by these boys, and they were speaking in a language that I didn't understand. It was a kind of Hindi, and the kind of slang that they were using and throwing at me, I didn't understand them. So sometimes they would just casually come and cuss, or just throw words at me, and I would sometimes feel really bad, and I'd be like, how dare him speak to me like that? How dare him, say something so negative and something so just so derogatory to me. So I would feel very, very shocked. I would feel very sad, and things just kept getting worse and worse over the years. There were of course a lot more kids when I moved to Noida. I mean, we had like 6 sections, so we had like around 240 kids in one classroom, and very in stark contrast to where I came from in Odisha, where we just had like hardly 30 kids in one classroom. So here there were so many kids and there were so many boys, and I was just so scared of going in front of any of those boys. And in Noida specifically, I remember even the girls were mean, not just the boys. Sometimes even the younger kids. So I used to go to a lot of competitions, drawing competitions and all, or declamation competitions. And every time we would go for a competition, we would sort of mingle around with the younger kids as well. So these younger kids also started coming and mocking me. And that's when it started really hitting me, and I felt really bad that I don't have any sense of matlab, there is no sense of respect in anybody for me at all. And those were the times when that frustration in me sort of started building up, step by step, because kids in the classroom, they started calling me names, and they started specifically using the word gay. So I used to earlier feel that if someone's femme, that does not necessarily mean that you have to be gay, and which is true. I mean, a lot of straight folks are also straight men are also femme, but the idea of being an effeminate man had sort of already become that idea of being a gay man, and therefore, everybody, some of the kids had started, calling me, that you're gay and all of that, and I didn't like it at all. I did not. I always thought that that's a bad thing to be, and I shouldn't be that at all. And even when one of my friends once came up to me, and we were having these discussions around, the Supreme Court, the High Court judgment back in 2009 when I was 14. And she came up to me and she was like, it's nice that people are sort of becoming open and that we're talking about LGBTIQA plus rights. And I was like, no, no, these are all wrong things. These are certainly things that should not happen. And kids would often come up to me and they'd be like, when you speak, you speak with your hands moving too much. Why can't you just control your hands a little bit? Why can't you just talk like a boy? Like, just be a man. Why do you be a little, why do you act like an effeminate guy, or why are you so feminine? And I just did not have an answer. So which is why I felt all the more frustrated that so many things and these allegations of sorts were just thrown at me, and I didn't have an answer why I was being the way I was. So the only answer to me, the only solution for me was just becoming a recluse and sort of pulling me out or pulling me away from all of my friends. And I started spending more and more time with myself. Even during break times, I remember I would just take my lunchbox and I just wanted to hide. So I would go to just one place in the school where nobody would be there around me, so that I don't come across any of the guys. Otherwise, they would just start throwing words at me, and I didn't like it. And even the other femme boys in the school, who I knew were perhaps gay back then, even they joined hands with all these other boys, and they started mocking me. So like even the victims were becoming like victimizers now, and it
Gosh.
was just horrible
It's just
overall.
like heartbreaking to listen to you, really. I wouldn't even believe this, that you went through all this. This is just unbelievable. But tell me, you didn't have any recourse? You couldn't go to your school management, for instance, and tell them that you're being bullied, or go back home at this point and say that you feared for yourself going to school?
Like I said, I never spoke about bullying back home at all, and I still don't know why. But I don't think. I mean, perhaps we just didn't have that kind of an environment where you could just come back home and just talk about this. What is my mom going to tell me? Like, what is she going to say that I haven't already heard? I was already being told that I shouldn't. It was already in my head that I am wrong here. So if only I felt that something wrong was happening with me, would I have the courage to stand up for something? I already was convinced that I'm wrong. So the question of me and having a conversation with my mother, what am I going to speak to her about? She doesn't understand, queerness at all. I didn't know who I was as a person. I just knew that I didn't want to be queer, or I didn't want to be identified with the community. So the only solution for me was just figure it out myself. And actually, I still remember around the time I was 16, when I was finally walking into class 11th and sort of preparing for board exams. I think that was the time when I felt that maybe things will start getting better because I had done really well in school the past year, and I felt like everything was going to be sorted. Uh, but suddenly, when I moved to this coaching center to prepare for the exam, and that's the JEE exams, which is like a joint entrance examination. It happens for all the engineering aspirants in the country. That's when things started sort of going downhill because I struggled a lot, understanding what they were teaching. And one of the major reasons why I was not able to focus was because I was really getting confused in my head about my identity. Even in the coaching class where I felt that, nobody's going to, call me out or anything, the boys around me started calling names, and, they started sort of bullying me in some ways. They would not want to be around me. They would not want to associate with me. Or even kids in general, not just guys for that matter, even girls in the class. And I could not focus at all on what was being taught. I just felt like I was just trapped in like a little that room for 4 hours. We used to be taught like physics or chemistry, like really heavy subjects for continuously like for 4 hours, and I would just sit in that room and just internally be crying, like just screaming inside that what is happening around me? What is this? Why am I going through this? Why am I putting myself through this? I love studying, but why am I not able to focus, when I come to the coaching center? And I think that's when I started having these conversations, because I started getting really confused, and I started having these conversations with myself for the first time that, what, Anvesh, you are probably gay. You are attracted to men. This is not a phase, and it's going to stay with you. You're going to have to deal with it for the rest of your life. That's when I started hitting the lowest. That's when I still remember, like, I would just be sitting alone, and for no reason, I would just start crying and bawling because I realized that there was no hope in my life anymore. The only reference point I had were these movies that I had seen growing up, where a gay man is always a sex maniac, or just a crazy guy who's always after this ultra masculine figure, and he just wants to be fucked. So I was like, this is not who I am as a person, and perhaps this is what my future lies. This is what's going to happen in the future, and I don't want that future for myself. I want a dignified future. I want a future where I'm respected and I'm celebrated, and I'm respected for the work that I do. And by that time, there was no sense of dignity in me at all, and I started realizing that I had actually lived all through these years without knowing that I deserve a dignified life, or I deserve a dignified representation. It hit me for the first time around that time that uh, I need to be in a space where I must be respected, and that was not there. So the more I got to realize that things were getting worse. Even when I remember going to this college sort of school camp that we went to, one of the guys called me out, and he spoke about how I'm not man enough, and everybody started laughing, and I felt so bad. I think those were the times when things started getting really, really worse. And every time someone would say something, like I would just burst out in tears because I was literally like at the threshold, and just you needed just that little push, and then I would just be crying. And I have to narrate this one story specifically. When we were going for the school camp, we were all sitting in a bus, and none of the guys wanted to sit with me. So I went and I sat with this, girlfriend of mine, and the school professor, he came up to me and he was like, "You can't sit with the girl. You will have to go and sit with the guys." And I was just like, "I don't want to sit with any of the guys." But he was like, "No, you have to sit with them." And he made me sit with the biggest bully, in the class. And I still remember he was just trying to sort of, sit away from me, and just so uncomfortable that I don't want to sit with him. He's gay. I don't want to be associated to him. I don't like him. Just saying very derogatory things. And that moment, I just remember crying through that entire bus ride, just completely bawling, my eyes swollen, and I was living my worst nightmare. And I was just like, I want to go back home. I don't want to do this ever again. And I still went back home, but never spoke about it to my parents. Even till date, I don't think my parents know about that episode.
Oh
But
my
I
God.
felt so humiliated, and I felt that was really one of the worst nights of my life. And I felt like a garbage bin. I felt like nothing. And I felt like I was like this, just a buffoon in the class who nobody gave two fucks about. And those were the times when I became very, very depressed. And I think I remember just switching off the lights. And this was my very same table back then as well. And I would just hold a pencil and I would just start scribbling on the table, because I felt like I was sort of channeling out my frustration inside me on that table. And then before my mom could see, I would sort of erase all the scribbling. And I remember just putting going to this wash basin. I would walk every night when my parents would go off to sleep, and they would think that I'm preparing for my exams, and I would just go and write and stand in front of the mirror and look at that little phenyl bottle we had, which is right below the wash basin, and I'd be like, maybe tonight I should just kill myself. Maybe I should just jump off the sixth floor, or maybe I should just jump off the balcony. What is the easiest way to kill someone? I started googling these things, that how do I kill myself in the easiest way possible. So these were the thoughts that started really coming to my head, and I had decided by that time that I don't think I want to live anymore. I think it's better, life's going to be much better if I just kill myself right now. Um,
Anvesh,
yeah.
this story is so repetitive in our community. It is not, it's so sad. This seems to be so common, and here we are talking to each other. And I've always thought to myself, I need to talk to Anvesh, bring him on the Coming Out Stories series, because this is a positive role model. Because I thought your life was so cool because you lived your dream life right now. I thought people need to have positive stories like yours. And I'm not saying your story is negative, but I'm saying, wow, behind this beautiful human has been a lot of trauma. Thank you so much for sharing this. I'm still in shock. So at this point, you're still going through this phase where you're saying, I want to kill myself. I don't want to live this life anymore. And I can understand. So at what point did you accept yourself and then become this person that you have become?
The reason perhaps today I'm able to sort of put on like a big smile and just wake up every morning with so much positivity is because of that fact that I had seen that one moment where I wanted to not live anymore. I didn't have any reason at all to wake up and sort of look at me and feel good about myself. I was so ashamed. I was just so I felt like nothing, like I said. And because I've seen the darkest of those days, that today I'm so grateful. And when I say I'm grateful about everything, I truly am, because I know what it means to not have any of this respect, any of this recognition that I have today. The way people celebrate my story, or the way that they celebrate my work, it means a lot to me, because I have seen, the worst of that life had to offer me, and which is why I decided, that moment, that me going to the wash basin and looking at the phenyl every night after my parents would go off to sleep, it had become like a periodic thing. It was happening every night, again and again, again and again. And then one night, I just went up to the phenyl bottle and I was just like, I can't deal with this anymore. Like, why am I coming and having the same conversation every day again with myself? I don't like stagnancy in my life. And I just told myself that, I'm going to make this better. I'm going to somehow at least, try and make this entire story. I'm going to rewrite my story. I'm not going to live, a life where my ending is a sad one in any way. So I think that eagerness to rewrite my story, rewrite the history that I've had, was so strong by then, that I felt like I can't kill myself. Otherwise, another Anvesh is going to come. I'm not the only femme boy that's going to enter this world. There's going to be many more Anveshes, and I didn't want all of their stories to end like mine. I didn't want them to feel that the only reference point that they had was that of a sad story, of a story of just killing yourself. That's the only solution. So I felt like I need to change this narrative completely, and there was just a great confidence in me from that night onwards, because I felt like I need to talk about this. I need to educate myself. I need to go on the internet, find out more about this, and that's how I actually sort of started, becoming more and more, confident in myself, and I started looking for reference points. So Unfortunately, there were no reference points, of course, here in India or on Indian television. But thankfully, I started watching, television shows like Modern Family with Mitch and Cam, or Jim Parsons, who had become very popular back in those days in 2012, 2013 through Big Bang Theory. Neil Patrick Harris had just come out in the open. He had spoken about him being gay. So there were more, popular, people, characters in popular media who were coming out in the open and talking about their queerness. And that's when it sort of, like a bulb sort of lit in my mind. And I was like, okay, maybe if in some other part of the world, life's better, then maybe I can change that narrative here in India as well. It's going to happen, but step by step, we'll get there. And that's the moment when it sort of, I became like, now I can't not talk about this. Now I can't be so, I can't be living under an umbrella anymore, just hiding away from the world. And I decided to, be a little more confident about myself. That was actually also the time around which one of my teachers, she actually caught me crying once in the classroom. And then she decided that, I should go to a psychologist, the school psychologist. So because you mentioned about, support from school or teachers, I would definitely like to mention that, I thankfully belong to an era where, schools had psychologists and it was mandatory for them to sort of have conversations with us. So thank God to Rupinder ma'am, wherever she is right now. She took me to school psychologist Meghna ma'am, and I had a conversation with her where she asked me a series of questions which were quite personal. She asked me whether I masturbated or not. She asked me about wet dreams. She asked me a few more things, which I understand. I mean, that's the kind of questions you have to ask to know the child and what he's going through. I answered all of them wrongly, but by the end of that conversation, I sort of started realizing that, you know what, I am actually gay. Like there was a certain sense of confirmation that, because I knew the kind of narrative that she was trying to sort of build. And I understood that I am actually gay and I'm attracted to men. And that night, I remember coming back home and just going off to sleep, and there was a sense of peace in me. And I was not scared anymore because I had finally, spoken about this to someone else. So I somehow felt that okay, maybe I just felt a sense of peace more than happiness. It was just peace that okay, now I've probably made peace with the fact that I am gay. And but I would feel a little bad sometimes every time I would see, like couples around me, or I would see, this Didi around, like an elder sister of mine who's living in the same floor that I was living in. She was getting married recently, and we went to her wedding, and I saw her walk up the podium with her groom, and they kissed and they sort of did the varmala, the exchanging of the garlands. And I just felt, I sort of had tears in my eyes, and I just told myself that I will never have this because God has made me gay, and I will not be able to marry a man. Obviously, that's completely out of question. So it's so sad that I'm just going to have like a doomed life in some ways when it comes to my love life. But at least I can lead a life where I can create a really nice career around me. So my career had become really really important to me, and I really really wanted to do well with my education. And I just felt that I had that dream back then that I'll just have a dog and I'll have a beautiful house and I'll have a good job and I'll lead my life happily ever after. So that idea of being with a man had completely never actually sort of occurred to me, or the idea of dating also had never occurred to me because for me it was just wanting to lead a more dignified life, which was way more important than trying to understand who I am as a person was way more important than wanting to get married or anything.
So did you not have anyone, I'm going to use the word, hit on you at that time? Because you're beautiful, you're, gorgeous young man, and, so did that not happen? Did you not have those experiences?
Oh, I was a very doggy little kid growing up. Yeah, I didn't look like all of this. All this diva-ness, this awesomeness that you see, all this, skin and all. I was a mess during my teenage years. Yeah, my skin was like I had all these, pimples all around my face. My face was really like was completely tanned. I was not taking really good care of my skin as well because mother would always do all of those things with my sister. She was the one who was always groomed to, charm all the men around. But I was never, and it's everything has become like the complete opposite. Like I am like the one in the house right now who does the most amount of makeup, who gets hit the most, hit on the most, and it's really funny right now how tables have completely turned. Like my mother has never put any effort in me, and now I'm the one who's teaching her how to do her hair. I'm doing her makeup. I'm teaching my sister how to do her makeup.
I love it.
Um,
I love it. But
so
tell me that. So
I
Anvesh,
think
then. Sorry, go on, please.
yeah, I was just saying that, so I remember even though back in those days, there was this one guy, he would always like every time I would sort of turn around, he would grab me by my ass. And I would not never understand why he did that. But he was a very attractive guy. He was a Kashmiri guy, like he had beautiful eyes. But I would feel, I don't know, I would feel a little shy as well. But I would, because I mean it's such an awkward little gesture to do where you're holding someone by their butt, but he would always do it. And in some ways, I was sort of attracted to him. So it was just like, being attracted to your own bully, which is like, oh God, I don't know, some storyline that here I'm building for a pornographic film, but that's how it was.
But so I'm this now. This is coming to another side, okay, to another news side of Anvesh. So when did you basically feel safe to talk to your family about this, about yourself? Because I know at some point you started blogging as well, so that the words
Yeah.
were out there, right, in the universe.
My parents were actually the last people to know about me. The entire world around me had already known. At least my friends, my sister already knew. She was the first one to know about it. I told my friends about it, especially like my school friends. And I remember my school friends, my best friends, they were like, "Anmesh, this is wrong. This is not right." But I was already very confident. I think I had sort of reached a space where I had become very comfortable with my queerness, and I realized that this is my queer identity, and that I'm going to own up to it. So even during those board exams, I remember just going out there and just being very confident and just being. I was delusional, and it worked in favor of me. I totally. I felt. I knew I was gay, and I was not shy anymore to hide it. So the moment I walked into college as well, I think that was the time when I every time someone would ask me about my queer identity, I felt a little uncomfortable because I felt like it was none of their business. But even if they asked, I would very much go out there in the open and talk about it. And word had already gotten out inside the entire of Triple IT. Triple IT is basically the college that I went for my engineering. For some context, I went for my bachelor's in electronics and communication engineering. So I went into an engineering institution surrounded by boys all around me. And I was very, very intimidated when I walked into the hostel room because there were 24 boys now I was sharing my space with, using the same washroom. And I used to get a little, intimidated. Very contrary to what a lot of people might think that, I was living my dreams and all of that. And that was bullshit. Like I was very, very scared and I was not feeling very comfortable. But even if there was a lot of homophobia, I knew somehow there was a confidence in me, newfound confidence where I felt like I'm going to give it back to them now. I'm going to call out the femphobia. I'm going to call out the homophobia. So now they had become scared of talking about this in front of me. So now, so like the tables literally had changed, had started changing within just a year's time. So I sort of started realizing that, okay, now I've reached a point where now that I'm so comfortable with myself, and everybody now is finding it more comfortable. And the guys, had become sort of curious with my life as well. They would come and they would ask me questions and they wanted to know more about me. Earlier, I used to run away from boys. Now I was not running away from boys anymore. In fact, the boys wanted to be friends with me and they wanted to know more about me. And I enjoyed that little bit of attention as well. I liked whatever little, attention I got. And of course, over the years, once I started modeling, once I went for Mystically India, all of that happened, and there was all the more attention. I started also, learning how to groom myself better, how to do my hair better. Today it's a mess, but usually I do my hair
That's beautiful.
much better much
Just
better than this. But started doing makeup, and then I started getting some attention. I think that's when I started feeling a lot more confident. When I started finally having that attention from men, straight and gay alike.
how amazing. So when did you come out to your parents and
Oh,
how
yeah,
did they
absolutely.
react? Yeah. And how did they react?
I came out to them around the time I was 18. So actually, 2 years after I had come out to myself, and they were very, very uncomfortable with it. They didn't understand what it was. They were like, "यार कहाँ से पता चला तुम्हें about being gay? Where did you get to know about homosexuality?" My mother was, you know, inconsolable. I mean, she was. It was not. It was very difficult to have a conversation with her. She was just crying. She was crying through months, and I would catch her crying sometimes. When she was on her own. She had a lot of expectations from me. She wanted me to, get a bahu or a daughter-in-law to the house. But that was not happening anymore. But she would also say some very insensitive things, and I would always get a little, taken aback. Things like, you have so many girlfriends. Why don't you just marry one of them? Or, you don't even clean your room. Why can't you just, have a, how will you live your life without a girl in your life? I'm like, even if I was a straight man and I was marrying a woman, I'm not going to get a woman to clean my house, first of all. Where is this narrative even coming from? And I was just shocked that, my parents were saying these things, and I was having a conversation with them about all of these things. So I was just completely like shocked and taken aback, and I was just like, I don't even know you guys anymore. So there were actually those, those 5 6 years that followed by. I had actually distanced a lot from them, where I mean, I didn't hate them or anything of that sort, or we were not there was no sense of, oh my God, my parents are so awful. But I had sort of started feeling that they were not understanding me. They didn't understand anything that I was saying to them. They didn't understand what my aspirations were in life in terms of career. They didn't understand what my aspirations in life were in terms of, being gay and wanting to have a family, wanting to marry a man. Even when I had a boyfriend, they would not acknowledge him as my boyfriend. They would call him a friend. So these were things that would stay with me, and I'd be like, yeah, I don't want to have a conversation with you anymore. So I realized that the conversations were not going anywhere. I was constantly hitting a wall with them. So I realized it's better I show what I want to, show to them by just leading my life the way I want to lead it. Because American parents are different. You can have a conversation with them and they would probably understand. But Indian parents don't understand with conversation. There is no idea of, having a sensible conversation with them. They will only understand once things start, getting better. And thank God, I mean, the force has been by my side, where, things started rolling and things started getting better and better over the years. I came out, I won. I remember the first, this inter college pageant of sorts that we had. And I won 3,000 rupees. I was very happy back then. So I won that, and then that gave me a little confidence to start modeling. So I started modeling a little, started doing little catalogs, started, I took up another internship as a visual designer, started making, digital art. From there on, I won Mr. Gay India. And then once I won Mr. Gay India, once I came back from Mr. Gay World, there was more attention for the work that I was doing. I was doing more, gigs as a model, as an actor. I was there in popular media in some ways. I was meeting all these very influential people. I was doing better in my career as well. I started focusing more on my art. And when things started rolling, then my parents were like, okay, maybe he's right. And now they've reached a point they're like, do whatever you want to do. We don't care.
What a turnaround, isn't it? But what a journey from not acknowledging to accepting yourself to going out in the world and becoming this Anvesh Sahu. And I'm so pleased to hear this. I'm so pleased. I'm very curious to know what happened to those insensitive people all through your childhood and up to college. Did they ever reconnect? Did you make peace with them?
Literally not even kidding, every bully that I had in school has reached out to me. And they've written long messages to me and apologized. Every bully that I had. Even
How?
that one bully that I had, who I knew was closeted back then, he came out to me a few years ago. I acknowledged, and I forgave him, but I never forget. So I told him that I'll never forget what he had done to me and how small and irrelevant he made me feel. I remember, but and I never forget, even any of the bullies, despite of whether might have, forgiven them all, but I'm glad that they all made time and they all reached out to me. And I feel like a lot of them also reached out because, I had become important. They wanted to be good friends with me because I was a celebrity of sorts and I was, in all the popular newspapers. I've been featured so many times in so many different, platforms. I've been featured on TED. I've been on the platform of TEDx so many different times. So they all listen to my stories, and whenever they see anything that, where I'm featured, they write to me and they tell me that, we really like, what you're doing with your life and we're very proud of you. And I think my family, they still don't understand especially the extended family. Like they always keep telling me that, I can't do this and I can't do that, which is why I actually have stopped going back now to my extended family because I feel like they don't understand it. And I'm not here to be humiliated again. So I avoid family functions now. Um, in fact, we had a wedding recently with of one of my uncles, and I remember him once telling me that whatever happens, Anvesh is not going to change. He's not going to get any better. And from better, he meant that I'm not going to be any more masculine. So then these things stay with me, right? I mean, I can't just forget about any of these things. So I just avoid them. I understand that we are on a different wavelength altogether. I've moved on in my life. I've reached a completely different space in my life where I'm doing my own thing. I'm marching on at the beat of my own drums, and I'm living a very happy life. So I don't need to go back to them and have any conversation with them.
I totally understand. I'm so glad that the world has found this Anvesh. Really, I would have held you very close, Anvesh, when you were a little kid, but I hold you even closer now because you found yourself, and the way you've accepted yourself. And I'm going to use the word. You tell the world to go and fuck off, basically, and that's what it is, right? Because and that's how,
Totally.
and that's how I think. I think that's how the narrative will change because until you accepted it within yourself, you were not going to change the narrative. You probably would have had that bottle of phenyl, and seriously, and the world would have lost you, or you would have been sad and scared all your life.
You're absolutely right. I would like to say this very clearly here that, I was the victim of homophobia only till the day I was a homophobe myself. And the day I stopped being a homophobe, I stopped being a victim of homophobia and I started becoming a survivor. And, I started living my life freely. Like I said, marching at the beat of my own drums, not giving a fuck about anything that people had to say. And I think the best, decision that I did, to myself was, the very subtle art of not giving a fuck about anything that people were saying about me. And I have never felt any better because
Look
I
at
felt
you.
like these are just words.
Yeah. Look at you, you're glowing. And Nicola, please show those photos again. I want the viewers to see the beautiful.
Right?
Yeah, look at this. This is
Oh God.
absolutely gorgeous.
Today, I mean, I'm sitting here in my little teeny tiny waist with my corset on. I mean, I would have never thought I'm going to show it off to everyone that I'm in full drag today. This could have never happened, 10 years ago, but imagine it's happened.
It's happened, it's happening, and thanks to you, many, many, many more will embrace this life, Anvesh. And that is
Yeah.
what it is about, right? We have to change the narrative, and we are at two different spectrums. You're 25, and I'm double your age, and we have to not live to 50 and come out. I didn't need to come out at 50. I should have come out at 20 or 15 as well. But hey, better late than never,
Yeah.
right? Yeah, but this is the world we live in. I'm actually very surprised. I had a beautiful conversation with you. We could go on, and thank you so much for sharing such a part of you with us. Is there anything you'd like to share before we end this conversation and continue later?
Yeah, I would certainly like to share like a little message that I had sort of written to myself when I was, 17, 18, struggling with my, coming out. That, the person that you look in the mirror is the person that you should love the most, that you should adore the most, that you should respect the most. And that'll only happen when you truly embrace yourself and you truly embrace your conscience as well. I always live my life, by my conscience. If I feel wrong about something, then I don't do it. And if I feel right about something, then I do it. And I don't live by any regrets. And I constantly had this narrative in my head that, I'm not going to have any regrets in my life 10 years from now. Whatever it is, I want to do it right now. So and that confidence came from the fact that, I had embraced myself 100%. So I didn't care even if people were going to judge me for my decisions, which they have many a times. I cannot care less about any of that judgment. So truly, truly embrace yourself and give yourself a big hug if you may.
And I'm going to give you a big virtual hug as well. Thank you, Anvesh. You stay this beautiful soul that you are. I've absolutely enjoyed. Like every word that you've said is going to stay with me. I cannot tell you how thankful I am to have had you on this show. I'm sure you're going to be a huge role model for the rest of our lives and forever, because Coming Out Stories from India, we hope stays on forever. But we also hope that we change the narrative, that we don't really need to have these stories in the future.
Yeah, true.
Subat,
Agree on that.
beautiful you, and thank you again, and thank you, Nicola, in the background for your support and helping us bring all this together. I also have to thank the Herbal Theory for being a gifting partner. So it's a small little hamper, but it's a beautiful little hand-picked stuff that they
Oh
will
my
send to
God.
you. Yeah, so thank you. I mean, we have to. All of us deserve a beautiful gift, right? And thank
God.
you. See, we love this reaction, so that's why we never say it.
Oh
And
my
thank you,
God.
Digital Fix, for your support in helping us amplify this. I also want to thank our audience. Please do share your feedback, your thoughts with us. And if you want to reach out to Anvesh, Anvesh is on every social media that you can imagine. Anvesh, you want to share your social media platforms?
Yes, I am Anvesh Sahu on Instagram, Anvesh.Sahu, and Sahu_Anvesh on Twitter. So basically, this permutation of Anvesh Sahu on all different platforms. Please find me on LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. Just Google me. You will find all the information about me, and please connect with me. I love, connecting with everybody from around the world and sharing my story and sharing, listening to their stories as well. So yeah, find me, please.
Excellent. Thank you. And please write to us at theviewsroom@gmail.com. Thank you again for joining in. Remember to follow me on Totally Out Now, just like Anvesh. I'm all over the internet as Totally Out Now. And you can subscribe to the YouTube channel, Raga Olga De Silva, for many such very, very interesting, very heartwarming coming out stories from India. And remember, closets are for clothes, not to hide your truth. Signing out.
Absolutely.
At Totally Out Now, you're watching Coming Out Stories from India, presented by The Views Room. Thank you, love. Thank you so much.